This is the second week of our series entitled Mosaic, when we are going to pay attention to those all-important biblical concepts of diversity, inclusivity, equality, and equity. Really, the intent of the series is seen in this cross behind me. We do not fear that which makes us different or distinct from one another, because it is Christ that holds us together. And any one of those pieces that's missing means that the picture is not complete. This is also a series about seeing, hence the mosaic eye up on the screen today. We want to draw our attention to groups or peoples that are often marginalized, underappreciated, or overlooked. Our purpose today is twofold. I want to introduce you to a new community partner for KirkWood, and then I'm going to ask that community partner to use their expertise and experience to help us understand socioeconomic diversity a little better, namely the plight of the poor in America and how we can best help and empower them. So let me introduce to you Angela York, the Executive Director of Thrive Peninsula.
Good morning. Hi, everyone.
So the first thing Angela's going to do is give us a 10,000-foot flyover of what Thrive does, to whom they do it, and why, of course, they do it.
Thank you. I'm just curious, by raise of hands, who has heard of us before? Oh, that's really encouraging. Okay, great. So we're a faith-based nonprofit. We are in Newport News. We serve families in Newport News, Hampton, and York County who face financial hardship. So our goal is to keep families afloat and keep them out of shelters like Port. And I understand many of you were just at Port, so that's great timing. And so our goal is to help them with emergency rent, utility assistance, maybe it's emergency help with transportation or childcare so we can keep them employed and stable. And then we also do one-on-one financial coaching with all the families who receive financial assistance. And we have a robust on-site food pantry that looks like a mini grocery store. KirkWood, of course, is a new partner, which we're thrilled about. We have 80 church partners across the peninsula that help us do this work. We use teams of volunteers as the primary frontline workers to do the packing of the groceries, the financial coaching, and the financial assistance. Last year, we distributed just over $500,000 in emergency financial assistance. And we did about 800 financial coaching sessions with families, and we distributed over almost 400,000 pounds of food, serving 18,000 people. So it's really increased over the last 6 or 7 years, but there's just a lot of people who need us. So we're working as hard as we can to serve more people each year.
For anyone here or watching online, their website is thrivepeninsula, all lowercase, .org.
That's right.
It's great. It will give you a lot more detail on what Angela just shared. But also, for those of you who are here this morning, Angela has set up a table in the fellowship hall. She will be there during our coffee time before Sunday school. I encourage you to go by, meet Angela, pick up more info, and it will give you more detail on what she just shared. So we're going to come back around to Thrive, but I want Angela to help us understand with greater clarity and depth what those who are poor in America face today. So can you do that? And then I'm going to ask you a couple more questions along those lines too.
Yeah. So I think one of the common misconceptions people have is that people shouldn't really be struggling right now because minimum wage is going up, and you might drive down 17 and see signs saying hiring, and you think, oh, how can people not have jobs? How can people be struggling? Look, everybody's hiring. But if you do some math and you take $12 an hour and you 40 hours a week, 10 or 12 months of the year, it's only $25,000 a year, and that's not including any taxes. Even if you look at a $15 an hour job, that is only $31,000 a year. And so if you have anyone else in your household you're caring for, like a child, it becomes extremely difficult to stay afloat. One of the things that's happening right now that you may or may not be aware of if you own your home is that renting is incredibly competitive right now. When an apartment comes up, a landlord might have, a dozen applications for that one place to live. And so naturally they're raising their prices, right? Supply and demand. And so rental prices have gone up anywhere between, I think the average is like $150 or $200 a month. And so for somebody who's already just scraping by, it becomes incredibly difficult because housing is our biggest expense generally. And then you take that and you couple it with the cost of gas and groceries that we're all seeing at the supermarket, all the basic needs that you really can't do much about. You can't just not pay those things. You have to do it. And so a lot of the families we're seeing are working families. They've never been to us before. They've never had to ask for help, and it's incredibly hard to do. But they're in this place because the economy is kind of pushing them there. And so it's not the people who are on the side of the road, although some of those people come and see us too. It's the people who are bagging your groceries at the store. It's the people who are waiting on your table at the restaurant. It's people we interact with every day in the service industry who are really struggling right now.
Mm-hmm. So that leads into the next question, which is, you have a much more informed perspective than we do, and I would love for you to walk us through a couple of stereotypes of those who are poor that are by and large wrong.
Yeah. So I would say there's two that are major. One would be the working aspect, right? So I forgot to share this, but 40% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. So 40% of Americans are not unemployed. They're actually working families. So number one, it's a lot of working families. Number two, the biggest misconception I get is that they just don't know how to manage money. I personally have friends, and you all probably have friends that are really terrible with money, but they have plenty of it, so it's fine. They're not going to become homeless. But the reality is that there's people who are low income, who are not great with money, and there's people who are really great with money, and they're both struggling because they don't have enough of it. So you can't always make more money just by managing it better. But I look at the financial skills that we give people in financial coaching as a toolkit. So imagine all of you have your own toolkit, and your toolkit is the education you were given by your surroundings, by your family, right? So financial knowledge is one of those things. Maybe you learned it from a parent. Maybe they taught you how to save. Maybe they taught you how to invest. That's something that you have in your toolkit. Something else that you were given would be like the stability of your home life. When you were a kid, were your parents struggling? Were you ever evicted from your home? Did you have enough food to eat? Was your neighborhood safe to play in? What was the education like at your school? Were you given opportunities to succeed? What percentage of your school went to college? These are all stepping stones and toolkits that we were given. And so when I look at somebody in poverty and somebody says to me, well, here's somebody in poverty, why don't you just go ahead and fix them? I'm like, it's really complicated because I'm meeting them today, but they've had a whole life before me that has set them up for their future. And one of the most common things I think about is if you're talking to somebody in leadership, for instance, right, like you're in a job interview, how do you interact with that person? That, to me, is such a big part of how they succeed, what kind of job they get. Did their parents have connections to help them land a job? Did someone connect them to wealth to help invest in their business? These are all the factors that play into somebody's life, kind of like a mosaic. And so we can't just look at somebody and be like, this is easy, just get a better job. What's wrong with you? Really, their whole life is leading up to their situation. And a lot of things are out of their control completely. And it's not their fault.
So, and I'm going to tell you right now, when Angela and I met on Zoom for an hour and a half and did all the interaction about this, I learned a whole lot. My favorite part of the conversation was her answer to this. She said to me, by the way, do you really want me to say that in public? And I said, yes, I really do. So give some advice to well-meaning churches that want to make an impact in the life of those who are poor or who may have some tools missing from their toolkit. Tell us what to do, but I also know that comes with what not to do.
Yeah. I always advise churches, don't recreate the wheel. Don't create your own program to serve people. I think that what you're doing with repairing and building ramps is excellent, and it's meeting a puzzle piece, and that's not what I'm talking about, because I think that that's wonderful. What I'm talking about is creating your own, let's solve poverty as a congregation. I think that it's great for you, if you really said, as KirkWood Presbyterian, we want to do this, the first step should be visiting other ministries and seeing what everybody else is doing, and then identifying a gap that you can fill, as you probably did with the Rams, as opposed to having every church in Yorktown create a ministry for this. So one of my fears in Yorktown is that you have all these churches, and of course the poverty rate is low in Yorktown. It's only 5% compared to 17 and 18% in Newport News and Hampton. So you have a lot of people who feel warm in their hearts and want to help folks who just walk in the door and ask for cash and say, I'm struggling with my bill, I need gas, and oh, sure, I just got out of church, here's some cash. I really highly do not recommend doing that. You have a lot of folks in our community who know exactly that that's what you all wonderful people do, and so they come to church and they want you to do that thing. As opposed to at Thrive, what we do is we bring churches and partners together. We pool resources. So if somebody is out in the parking lot, you can say, well, why don't you call Thrive or call United Way, and these agencies will help you. Because in most instances, almost every instance, that person doesn't need cash today. They just want your cash now because you might give it to them as a sales tactic. So I would highly recommend making the referral and letting us vet them, let us verify the bill, do the financial coaching appointment, do all of the things that we do well, and then we can make sure that the funds that are being given in generosity can go to the right people and really solve the immediate crisis that they're facing. And I say all that, I think that there's a very small percentage of people who do that kind of thing. Right? The small percentage of people, I can name a couple, and Pastor Chris recognized the names of a couple people that we both mutually knew were in our community doing this. They give a bad name to everybody. I tell my staff all the time, and I tell people in the community, at Thrive, we get taken advantage of sometimes. It's a very small number of people doing this work, and they give a bad name to everybody else. So anytime, I would encourage you, anytime you see somebody who's poor taking advantage of people, just stop yourself and go, this is not every poor person I've met. This is one person, and they do not represent everyone. They might be the most vocal, they might be the most present, but they're not the majority of people who need assistance.
So can you see why KirkWood is partnered with Thrive? It's us taking Angela up on her advice. We're not going to recreate this wheel. We're going to partner with a group that does this really, really well. So come back to Thrive, because it's also going to help us envision what successful, quote unquote, poverty empowerment ministry looks like. Tell us a couple of success stories from Thrive.
Sure. So we have the basic need success stories where you have somebody who's living in their car, and we're able to help them with a deposit so that they can get into an apartment, and then they don't have to sleep in their car. So we have dozens of stories like that. The program that we're focusing on right now is called Level Up. And Level Up is a long-term financial coaching program where we walk with someone over time and they try to help them reach a goal. And so one of the goals we have is we want to help 10 people this year reduce their monthly income by $50. And so we had somebody who had been coming to us she came to us for financial assistance. She was using our food pantry, and she finally said, okay, I want to change my life. I want to start down this path. And so she started working with a coach. She was able to reduce her monthly expenses and had worked her way up to saving $350 at Christmas time. And then her and her daughter were able to take a trip to New York City, and she said guilt-free that they could do this thing and they didn't have to go in debt, and all their bills were paid. And that was just a joyful moment for her to realize that she has power in her financial knowledge, and she can change her trajectory. And so Level Up is something we want to change 20 people's stories this year, and really either give them an emergency savings account or help them reduce their monthly expenses so that they're not just surviving anymore, they're thriving. So
I know from talking to you that Thrive has some significant projects just around the corner. Why don't you tell us about those?
Sure. So we're doing all this ministry in a very tiny office building on Warwick Boulevard. It's actually across from the E-Mart, Pep Boys. It's 2,500 square feet. And we're at the point now where we can't do much more in this space. And so we're launching a capital campaign, and we're purchasing it's actually a 9,200 square foot building on Nettles Drive. It's currently a Boys and Girls Club. So we're buying it from Boys and Girls Club, and they're going to lease back 30% from us. So we're going to continue to share that space with them. But we're going to do something that no one else is doing on the peninsula, and that is we're going to open the market at Thrive Peninsula. So the market is going to be a food pantry that looks and feels like a grocery store. And the idea is that it's a dignifying experience for all these families who are in this place for the very first time and are too embarrassed to ask for help. There's a statistic that says that 60% of food insecure families will not go to a food pantry due to the stigma. So we want to take the stigma off the table and just allow them to come to the table and to grab the food and the vegetables and the dairy products that they need so that no one has to struggle or eat less food or eat unhealthy foods. They can just come and take free food. And so that's going to be kind of the big deal of our new space. And then we're also going to have a dedicated financial wing where we're going to offer financial coaching and the Level Up program. We're going to have a big conference room area that we can do workshops and classes. And then in the center of the building, there's actually a courtyard. And in the courtyard, we're going to plant a raised bed garden so that we can have our own produce that'll feed our pantry too. So we're super excited about it. We're hoping to finish all this year and move in. And then we're going to do a capital campaign to raise all the money so that we can keep our expenses low so the most resources can go to the people who need it.
Let's finish with beyond money, whether it's yearly, monthly support, giving to the capital campaign that's coming. If someone here wanted to volunteer or make a difference by partnering with Thrive, list some of the ways that they can do that, because there's a lot.
Yeah, so most of what we do is, like I said, using volunteers. So we have 100 weekly volunteers who come in and do all the things I mentioned. And we train you and things like that. But we would love to have folks step up and say they want to volunteer. We also do group volunteer projects. We do companies come in and do volunteer projects. You can do meal kits, or I know you guys already support food pantries, and that's fine. You could do blessing bags, which is like a kit of several toiletry items that you could bring us, and we'll distribute that through the pantry since it's not covered in food stamps. You can do a shoe drive. We collect shoes year-round, and they go to third world nations like Haiti. We do it actually as a fundraiser, so that's how we earn some money each year. I think that's most of it, just volunteering. Most of our volunteers come in 2 hours a week. And so it's a great way to meet people, especially folks who come from all the different churches. It's a very kingdom-minded environment, because you have people, I usually say they're Baptist through Episcopal, like all the people who wouldn't necessarily have dinner on Friday night, but they all believe. I said something controversial, I can tell. Was it the E word? I don't know. But I think it's cool that people can come together and celebrate what they have in common.
Yeah. So this will not be the last time you hear about opportunities that we can partner with Thrive. Now that they are a partner of ours, expect to hear from us periodically about it. I'm sure that Angela will be back, or announcements for Thrive will be back. Do go to their website, and all this info will be there, thrivepeninsula.org, or just visit Angela at the table later in the fellowship hall. I thought that we would end this presentation today by reminding you that caring for the poor in a meaningful way is not just central to Christianity and the Holy Scriptures. It's actually part of what defines Presbyterianism. This is one of our denomination's creeds, the Confession of 1967, and we're going to affirm together aloud the section of this creed that is all about what Angela talked about today. So when we get to the next slide, you're going to see that your parts are in red. And when we get to those parts, just say those, read those aloud together in unison, okay? The reconciliation of humanity through Jesus Christ makes it plain that enslaving poverty in a world of abundance is an intolerable violation of God's good creation. The church cannot condone poverty, whether it is the product of unjust social structures, exploitation of the defenseless, or a lack of resources. The church calls all people to do their abilities and possessions as gifts entrusted to them by God, not just for the well-being of their families, but also for the common good. A church that is indifferent to poverty, or that evades responsibility in economic affairs, or that is open to one social class only, or that expects gratitude for its benevolence, makes a mockery of reconciliation and offers no acceptable worship to God. Amen. So let's finish today by praying. I want to give you a moment or two at home or there in the pews, just in the quiet. Pray for Thrive. Pray for some people you know by name who might be struggling financially and probably are struggling with some of the things you heard Angela describe. And of course, pray for this partnership now that we have with Thrive. And in a moment or two, after your quiet prayer, I will pray aloud for us all. Lord God, give us your heart for the poor. May our abundance not blind us to the needs of those around us. May we value those who have a lower annual income than we do, less education than we do, more financial instability than we do. May we see them as equally valued and loved by you. We pray specifically this morning for Thrive, that you would continue to bless the holy work that they do, so often working in the margins where your people have not. We celebrate what they have accomplished. We look forward to hearing even more that you will do through them and the lives that will be changed. Help us be faithful, good partners for them, generous, loyal, and gracious. And we pray especially for Angela. May she be a servant leader to all those volunteers, to all who are on staff, and to all who enter that building. Give her patience and resilience. May she find great joy in the work she does. We lift this to you together. Amen.
Amen.
Angela, this is our gift to you for being here today. Would you please thank Angela for coming this morning?
Thank you.